Hey, I'm Orlando Jones, and I just want you to know that the Moana Nui Podcast will be starting soon. Stay tuned, yo.
I'm Veronica Taylor, and from myself and Ash Ketchum, I just want to say, Moana Nui, I choose you!
You know, sometimes you got to remember to press that mute button. Aloha, everybody. Welcome to the Moana Nui Podcast. Today's Wednesday, April 17th. Yes, this month is going by quickly, just like every month seems to be going by lately. I hope everybody is doing well. Tonight we are resuming our Indigenous Legal Insights monthly segment. And tonight I'm joined by Kumu Michelle Manu, who she has so many talents. But tonight she is bringing her legal hat and her legal experience to help us navigate the topic of legal service agreements and why that's important. If you are sitting there and you're like, I don't know why that's important, we're about to share with you because, you know, it's very easy for us to be intimidated by some of this stuff. But before we get started on that, I just wanted to share one announcement. So, you know, for our Hawaiian community, especially us living here on the continent, sometimes, like some of us have some knowledge of Olelo Hawaii or our native language, but some of us don't. And we're always looking for resources to help us learn in different modes and methods. And so I wanted to share something from Kalo HCC, so Kalo Hawaiian Civic Club in Portland, Oregon, being led by Lealoha Kaula. And in the month of May, shucks, I forgot to bring up the graphic. But in the month of May, they are hosting Native Hawaiian language classes, Papa Olelo Hawaii. It will be every Tuesday in May from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. And this, I believe this will be happening via Zoom. So for those who are there in Oregon, that will be in person, but they're also having an online component for those of us who are not physically located in that region. I will pop up the link on the screen or in the comments at some point after we do the introductions. But I wanted to share that because I think that's going to be fun. I'm already enrolled. I'm excited. I'm always like, I've taken language before, but it's been so long. And like anything else, if you don't practice and you don't use the skill set, it's easy to get lost. So encourage everybody to take advantage of that opportunity and that resource. I'm hoping that they're recording, and maybe at some point we can have it rebroadcast here on the podcast to take advantage of that. So mahalo to Kalo ACC, to Lealoha and her team for continuing to push that forward and bring that resource to our community. Alrighty. So as I was saying, tonight's episode is on legal service agreements. And so I think this is the foundational document for those who might be in need of legal services. And Kumumanu, as you know, a lawyer with years of experience in this field, is going to walk us through some of this tonight. If you have questions, you know, you're watching there, please feel free to leave it in the comments, and we will bring them up and answer them as we go along. Anytime in the show, you can do that. But so I guess to get started, Kumano, I guess we can start from the beginning. What is a legal service agreement? And why is it important to everyday life? You know, what are some examples of some things that you might need it for?
Well, I want to first say thank you to Lea Aloha. And that's wonderful because, May is AANHPI month, right? So capitalizing on that NH. But it's nice too to see it outside of our general February Olelo month. So it's wonderful. Can't continue to learn enough about our language. I'm still always like, how do I transcribe this? How do I translate this? And it's always very difficult. Just so much so like the legal profession, right? And law. Hard is a different language. And like I text you, it's a different universe. And unless you are in it constantly with the constant changes, while it is very archaic and can't keep up with the rate of business or even academia, um, it's good to stay immersed in it here and there and know what the changes are. But contract law really is tried and true. We make some changes as the world changes, but some of these provisions are everlasting. So legal service agreement versus just a regular legal contract is actually a contract between you and an attorney or a law firm, someone that's going to represent you as you in a legal space in some sort of dispute before, during, or after it is with the court. And sometimes it doesn't even need to go to the court. It can be settled outside. So legal services agreement, what we call an LSA, and there's acronyms for everything in legal. LSA can also mean laboratory services agreement. So when you hear an acronym, ask what the full title is. And these can range, they're different for each area of law and your need of defense or also to actually sue someone. There's the civil and then there's the criminal aspect, and those are two entirely different things. Just like maybe a divorce versus a personal injury lawsuit, they're very different. But what is consistent is the discovery portion where each side turns over their evidence so that there can be a worthy or good faith settlement presented or a settlement reached, or it's right before you go to court. So during this engaging an attorney, you shouldn't just go with the first attorney that you meet with unless you know them or they've been referred by someone that you really, really respect and has possibly hired them for services previously. I would suggest meeting with 2 or 3 law firms or 2 or 3 attorneys to see who you feel comfortable with. And not just feel comfortable with, but ask specific questions like, how are you going to charge me? If I call you and you don't answer, are you charging me 0.25 of an hour for listening to my voicemail to call me back? Or are you going to charge me 0.10? And that's between 6 minutes and 20 and 15 minutes. So it's a big difference there. So looking at how they're going to charge you. Also, how they're going to charge you for any copies that need to be made. One firm may say it's all inclusive within the hourly rate that we're charging you, and one may say it's 10 cents a page or $1 a page, or that you have to pay what their vendor is charging them. Now, if you have a case that's voluminous with documents, this is going to be quite a hefty fee. Also, are you working with only the attorney, the partner, or maybe the sole practitioner, or is he hiring also maybe a 1 or 2 year associate that's an attorney that's passed the bar? Is it going to be a law clerk that is in its second or third year, his or her second or third year of law school? Or is it a paralegal or a legal secretary? And how are you going to be charged hourly for the support that this attorney will need to represent you? Ultimately, that attorney is responsible for everyone that works beneath him or her. So if he or she delegates to them, that attorney is responsible. He cannot or she cannot come back and say, well, I didn't know that my paralegal, or I didn't know that my law clerk, or I didn't know that this law associate, legal associate did this, this, and this. Ultimately, in the eyes of the law and in the laws of the American Bar Association, this attorney is in charge and responsible personally for everyone that he or she delegates work to. So, the costs, who's working, and also settlement. So say there's different fee arrangements. You can hire someone on contingency, which we see this a lot, is very common in personal injury matters, whether it's it could be wrongful death, medical malpractice, a car accident, or anything slip and fall. I've seen some very severe slip and fall incidents where A young lady actually lost all of her teeth on the top part of her mouth, and they were trying to blame it on her footwear. And then, of course, defense came back and said that it's because of the lighting. You weren't mindful of the lighting, actually kicked it over and then fell. So there's all these different things that happen when there's a lawsuit. And so making sure that if you do file in contingency, this means that a lawsuit or you take on an attorney in the contingency type of payment arrangement, that you're paying nothing up front, absolutely nothing. And you will have to pay them when the case is concluded. So this can be a percentage of usually 33.33% of what you're awarded if you are actually the plaintiff that's suing and they're representing you. And they can also get expenses on top of that. So keeping track of what they've actually done and looking at their legal agreement, the bill every month to make sure that a letter that maybe they took 0.4 of an hour, 24 minutes to prepare, didn't actually take 3 minutes. And so making sure that you're being billed accurately. There's also a hybrid that we've seen take place over the last 10 to 15 years, which is half contingency and half hourly. And if this is the case, then maybe they'll get 20%, 15%, something that is paid at the end of the suit when it's concluded or the matter. But then the hourly you have to keep up with, which would be a lesser hourly rate than you would normally pay if you're just paying hourly. So that would mean, like, if an attorney is $350 an hour, I've seen some up to $1,250 an hour, depending on the area of law. That's right. Say it's $350 an hour, but you've gone the hybrid route. So they're going to take 20% of the total settlement amount, and then you'll pay maybe $150 or $200 per hour instead of the $350. Is this something that you can handle? And when is this paid? So when will you have to pay this? Is it is it 5 days after you receive the legal services invoice, or is it, monthly or quarterly? Which, if it's quarterly, that's going to be a pretty hefty fee. It's kind of pay as you go. And the last arrangement that we commonly see is just hourly. And that is just what I said, hourly with expenses. This would be, again, a partner at $950 an hour, a junior partner maybe at, $650, a regular associate at $450, and the paralegal $150. And you'll see this. And so there might be a lot of people touching your file. And that means that maybe the paralegal at $150 an hour will make contact with you to try to get more information on how the incident occurred, who were the parties, asking for certain documents, you sending them to her or him. It's usually a her. And then they put it all together, and then usually an associate or a partner takes a look at what they've done. So you don't only have just $150 an hour times maybe 15 hours. Then you also have the partner at $950 or $650, whatever the amount is. And he or she bills you for that time of review of what the paralegal put together. So that can go back and forth in case something's missing, or, I know the client told me she treated on this day with this doctor. It's the third doctor she's treated with. I don't see that record in here. She said, well, I didn't know that. Now she needs to contact you again and ask you to get those records. And, you can do as much as you can by yourself. You can go to the healthcare provider, turn in a HIPAA release, and then the records are ready for you 10 days later. And then so it's all in the timeline too. So those are the 3 different ways that LSAs are generally billed to you if you hire a lawyer or a law firm.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. See, even just hearing the cost, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it's hefty.
Yeah.
There's also a different way too, which you don't see except for in kind of inventions and IP, and that would be where the attorney decides, and you're seeing this with a lot of financial institution banks, if they're going to invest in your invention or your IT firm or this new technology that you have created, they will actually ask for a percentage of ownership. So you will see that as well in intellectual property.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can see where that would make sense from the lawyer's perspective, for sure. So, let's see. So for people who are like, what are the most common things for like regular people? So maybe not so much from a business perspective. What are typically like the types of cases that you see or your lawyer friends or whoever typically see from on a normal basis? I know you talked about divorce.
Yeah, divorce for sure. You can see it in business startups. So
Mhm.
LLC agreements where everything is laid out, who is in what office. Is there one manager? Is there co-managing members, if you will? They're called members instead of, partners in a partnership,
Okay.
or owners, but it's basically the same. So that's a big one that we start to see a lot. LLC is limited liability companies are very popular, whether it's to own just a piece of property or actually be a company. Um, Intellectual property, again, who owns what there. We're starting to see a lot more of that as people start to get more fluent with websites and
Yeah.
online commerce and providing services. So SaaS agreements, service as it's the software as a service
Oh
type
yeah.
of agreement. Yeah. Um, all sorts of things. I mean, of course, the usual lawsuit for personal injuries.
Mhm.
That's a big one as well. And of course, also ADA, American Disability Act. There's a lot of lawsuits out there for not just your website, because there's an ADA add-on that most people should have for those that have challenges. But also, I remember when I was back working for an insurance company, I did like 128 cases at one time, federal and state. And there was a gentleman, I don't know how he did it, but I just kept getting these, the petition. It's a complaint, it's a lawsuit for this one gentleman who was in a wheelchair, was going around the Southern California area looking for restaurants that specifically did not have the ADA required ramp for individuals with
Just
wheelchairs.
mhm.
So he would start suing all of these restaurants, and some of them were actually insured by the insurance company that I worked with. And so we were considered in-house counsel. So I'd see all of those, and he was on fire. He brought endless lawsuits, made sure they corrected this, and he also got a payout. So you're seeing a lot of those too, where it's preventative in the eyes of the plaintiff to help others, and they're making a pretty penny on it too. So in every area of life, we're seeing lawsuits, especially in California, and that leads. Number two would be New York, obviously, and I think it's for obvious reasons, density, population of people. Um, yeah, so that's normal. We say that all the time. A lot of employment lawsuits as well. There's still inappropriate behavior out there, sexes against sexes, same sex on same sex, as well as just employers behaving badly.
Yeah, I can see that. I what about sexual harassment?
Yeah, this is one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not necessarily always on the person that's being, it's not beneficial to the person that's being harassed, because there's so many fiery hoops that one has to jump through, make the police reports, gather the evidence, make a log, go before the court, file a restraining order. And even then, the judge may find that that individual may have to stay away from you, your workplaces, your cars, your children, anywhere that you are. But, that's violated all the time. So.
Yeah, that's at least what I've seen in whether it's personally or stories that that I've heard. Unfortunately, like the person who's being harassed is the one who has like the highest like the steepest hill to climb. So it's a shame because I'm sure that's why a lot of it goes unreported and not dealt with, because it's like,
Mhm.
well, that's such a heavy lift. And then do you even get action, or something that helps in your favor? Just frustrating.
In corporate America, we're still seeing it too. There was a case with L'Oreal. I can't find the specific case right now, but it was actually a VP. And I guess when she met some of the higher ups, the higher ups had a conversation that she's not pretty enough to work at L'Oreal. And so this was obviously determined to be toxic and harassment and discrimination. So she won her lawsuit and it was in the millions. So each, I guess, profession has its stuff,
Oh, yeah,
So
definitely. Especially one that's like a beauty brand like that.
yeah.
Okay, so for like our Hawaiian community, what are let's see. What are some of the like the legal challenges that you have seen in like a historical and cultural context? I mean, I think for me, like the most recent one, obviously, is what has resulted from the Lahaina fires. I haven't seen an update from a legal perspective in a while. Have you been still hearing status updates from what's going on there?
No, you don't hear. You have to actually dig for it, and you'll welcome on us not meeting every week anymore. I really don't see much in the news.
Mhm.
So I know that housing is still an issue, water is still an issue, suicide is still an issue, and I'm not sure who's out there in a legal capacity. But I haven't heard anything about other continental law firms on the continent coming to Hawaii anymore, which is really good, because I think they were trying to capitalize on the Kanaka and the land that they owned. And so I really don't know. I'm sure that we'll hear about it when there's indiscretions of someone being taken and misled by their legal counselor or attorney at law. So I'm not sure, but for Indigenous historical, it's just, I don't know, pervasive, needing the help and not really getting what they need. Um, Resolution, I think of, just the land as well, people waiting for, homestead. And it's just the legal system and many other systems and back home and even here just need to be burned down and rebuilt. And that's just my personal opinion, but I'll probably get in trouble for that as usual. People that actually care. We need people that care and know the language of legal so that they can actually help those that are coming forward. And actually, it's hard for Kanaka to come forward and say, I need help. And then when they come forward and they need help and then they're screwed, I think it goes into the DNA where future generations just don't even ask anymore, and then they
Mhm.
find themselves being kicked off their land, not knowing that they needed to respond to a notice or show up somewhere and stand up for themselves. I think it's hard because we don't want to be bound by the current system, but this is the current system. So
Yeah. I think you highlighted one of the issues, which is understanding that there's a notice for you to show up. But then, even also when Kanaka do show up, the other hurdle is the economic one, right? Like, because not everybody can afford the fees and, and all of that stuff. And so that also makes it hard for us
very,
to reclaim our land. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that part is frustrating. Do you happen to know someone named Daniel Anthony? His organization is called Mana Ai, and um
Mm-mm.
he is like really big in the restoration, like food sovereignty, and talking about um so he has a farm where he's raising poi, and his goal I think was like 10,000, was it 10,000 boards or 10,000 pounds of poi? I was listening to his episode on the Keep It Aloha podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 2 hours and 40 something minutes. And like he dropped so many gems in there. He was talking about allodial titles, and like how that works and what it really means. Um, and I can't remember. He was talking about a Kauai family who they were paying to lease the land from the Robinsons, who's obviously owned the land for a long time there, 2 parcels. And after, I guess someone in his family had like dropped some numbers that they didn't really know what it meant, but it was essentially like his allodial title number. And so he did his research. I went back to the court
Goodness.
because they tried to kick him off his land. went back to the court after he did his research and found out that his family's land was actually the 2 parcels that they had been leasing. So he successfully got his land back. And now they live on it and they've been able to develop it. They built a house. It wasn't anything like spectacular.
What
But
about
we
the
don't need
back rents that they
spectacular, right?
paid? No.
Yeah,
What
no, I
about the
don't.
back rents?
Well, so that's the thing. Like, I was thinking, like, did they go after like what they had been paying the Robinsons? Because they owned it the entire time. So to me, they're entitled to the money because they have Pala Pala.
They are.
So he didn't like talk about that perspective, but that's immediately what came to my mind. Like, yes, it is my land. I get it back now, and you owe me, right? Like, so. But I found it so fascinating because I've always been wondering, like all of this terminology that, again, when it comes to land issues in Hawaii, it's easy to get lost in all of the terms, and just the way he was talking about it was easier, to
Oh,
understand.
good. Yeah, the Robinson family owns Niihau,
Yep.
so they don't need the money. They
100%. Yeah. And obviously they have a lot of land on Kauai too.
yes.
And what's the other? The Grove Farm. I can't remember who. I think Grove Farm was out of the Wilcox family, I think.
Yeah, Robinson owns they're the largest landowner on Kauai.
Yep, I believe that. Yep.
Crazy.
Definitely. So
Wow,
yeah,
thank you
I
for
thought that
sharing that.
yeah.
Daniel Anthony.
Yeah, such a very knowledgeable Kanaka.
We need more of them
I totally
to
agree.
talk with us so they can, like you said, it was a lot clearer. This is what we need. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try to see if he would come on the podcast.
Oh,
I
you
think that would
should.
be
Yes.
a great person to have join us too. Let's see. So we talked about the components of the legal service agreement, why you would need it. Are there any like kind of gotchas and what like to know like what are some signs of a lawyer that's probably being predatory versus someone who's going to treat you fairly? Is there any like early indicators that people could be on the lookout for?
It's hard to know. I mean, you really have to go off your na'au when you're sitting there and feeling the energy and how this attorney treats staff members, what the office looks like, what they look like. I remember when I first got into law 28 years ago, entered the workforce 28 years ago, May next month. I mean, we were told that you have to wipe down your shoes just for an interview. And today you see people just, yeah, no, it's very, so I kind of still hold to that too. It's part of my evaluation of someone in my field is, will you handle my case with such detail and care? Or are you just going to gloss over certain things? And while a lot of it can be legalese, everything is important, especially if you're operating on behalf of someone else or another family. So following your na'au, taking a look at the condition of the office, the files, the computer, if there's like there was one attorney I was working with once, she was just a biohazard. I'd pull open a file and there was ketchup everywhere that looked like blood, and she always had some sort of stain on her. She was partying the night before, and it was no surprise that she was missing, court hearings because her personal life was a mess. So looking at the character of someone that you're hiring as best as you can without knowing them. And this is part of the Maoli way, is the kuleana, the responsibility that one had in this area, this profession, if you will, of our culture. And that's still the same today, I think, looking for someone that's detailed, is respectful, and use your spidey senses, right? If your skin's crawling, but you have no physical evidence, take note of that before, and then meet with other attorneys. And then look at all of them in quiet time, and don't just use the pros cons, use how you feel as well, and then make your best educated decision.
Yeah, that's good advice. I think sometimes we don't trust our gut enough. Like
It's true.
it's probably telling you something. It's that mind and gut sometimes at odds, but yeah, I definitely tend to be a gut energy person. Like it does, like I don't need to know everything, but your energy around you like speaks volumes to me. So like if I'm already feeling some bad vibes and we haven't even engaged yet, I can only imagine when we do engage. So yeah, that's good advice. What's up, Ryan? Good to see you. Let us know if you have any questions. We're talking about legal service agreements, but if you have any legal questions in general, we're generally open to that too. Um, yeah, let's see what else. Oh, maybe we could talk about some of the resources. So for folks who are like seeking legal resources, where would be a good place to start?
Let's see here. Let me pull up my list, which is plentiful. It's nice to see so many resources that are available. I would start first with the state of Hawaii. And Moana, maybe they're perfect. Okay, at this link, you'll be able to see they have sections for public safety and crime. So this also helps you find an offender. If there's someone down the street that your na'au is saying this is not okay, and your mo'o or your keiki are running around, you can go ahead and search here for a sex offender. And unfortunately, beware of when you pull this up, if you do a locale, because I know in SoCal, if you do this, if you do a locality search, you will find some on your street and actually clustered. So you'll also find Hawaii Social Services. This is for child welfare services and adult and community care services. Very important. The state has resources for infants that are, and they're also federally funded for shelter, food, and childcare. So if you are trying to get on your feet and you don't have childcare and you actually found a job, I would go to Hawaii Social Services and see what's available to you in your area. Children and Family Services. So this is where counseling will happen. It is actually for early childhood education, child abuse and neglect prevention, and also assistance. So if you know someone or if you are suffering in a family where there may be some abuse and neglect happening, there's some resources here. Also, if you'd like to be of assistance and foster and adopt, this is also on this page. Going straight to legal services, there's Volunteer Legal Services, Legal Aid Society of Hawaii, and Hawaii Lawyer Referral Service. These are very good. If you need anything here that's not family related, they can help you. And it can also be for your lease where you're a tenant. So housing law, consumer law, if you've been duped, someone has committed fraud, maybe you attempted to purchase services or goods and you never received them and there's no response, consumer law portion here can help you. And of course, the Hawaii Lawyer Referral Service is to the State Bar Association. So they have plenty there, attorneys waiting to be connected with you for whatever area of law that you may need. And there's also a pro bono section of the Hawaii State Bar Association that can help as well. Then there is the Hawaii State Judiciary, and this is for low to moderate income Hawaii residents that need a variety of services within legal, that they need help. And so you can go ahead and click on the Hawaii State Judiciary, and that's exactly it. I think State Bar. It's that's okay. It's courts.state.hi.us. And this will take you to the online pro bono portal. Yep, exactly. There it is in the banner. Moving nice and slow. You can take a screenshot of that. This is a really great resource as well. And it's linked to a different, if you click on it, there's 3 buttons and you'll be able to click what sort of needs you have and be connected to the associations that can help you. There's quite a bit of corporate funding behind this. And lastly, I would think, well, there's 2 more. Hawaii Legal Services Portal. This is a really great resource. It's lawhelp.org, exactly. And this will also connect you with justice organizations within the state of Hawaii, that can help you. And there's also nonprofits that are associated with these organizations that have funds, clothing, food, and lodging, and possibly even daycare and work. So can help you get on your feet. And then lastly, there's Volunteer Legal Services of Hawaii, and that's vlsh.org. And they have a variety of different volunteers in the legal aspect that can help with services that you may need. So finding what you need, there's quite a few resources out there.
That's great. I appreciate those list of resources. I'm trying to think how we can put it in the chat so people can, uh, those who may be watching the
Yeah, take a screenshot or
record
something.
later. Yeah, let me see. Where's
Yeah.
my? It's like, where's all my notes, my things? Oh,
And
here
then
we
also, I think as a note of power for us, Mana, is it's we the people, right? So we can do this for ourselves too. It's just going to be a little more difficult.
go. Mm-hmm.
So don't feel overwhelmed. Try to learn this new language and ask what forms are needed and what the process is. And we're not dummies. We're ingenious, Kanaka. And
Yes.
we can do this for ourselves too. We don't have to outsource it, if you will.
Right.
But it's nice to have help. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like, if you um have experienced something, and then you see people around you who are going through something similar, sharing your,
Absolutely.
what happened to you and what, like, how you went about it, that can be super helpful and empowering too. Um, because, trust is a big thing when it comes to these matters, and being such a community oriented um, community, then it's, I think that speaks volumes too. So I tried to put it in the comments. It might be a little bit of a blob of of text, and if so, I'm so sorry.
It's all
But
good.
what I'll do later after on our YouTube is kind of copy and paste into there, so that hopefully that'll show up better for folks who are watching the replay.
Can I just say something, sis? I think from a pohihihi or metaphysical sense, anything that comes in our life, whether it's legal or otherwise, we need to trust ourselves. And that means maybe taking a different perspective than what we're used to in our colonialized way. Instead of going off emotionally and talking to everyone else about it and getting a consensus and feeling supported there, use your mana, contain it, and put all of your mana towards resolution. And you'll
Mhm.
notice you'll have what you need in the uhane, to continue without feeling exasperated. So use your anger, use that frustration, and transform your mana into something that's productive.
Yeah, I think that's a good point for sure. Uh,
Yeah,
and some, like in today's society, I think it's easy for people to jump to, oh, I'm gonna sue, or whatever, whatever. I think some things can just be resolved amongst the parties if
true.
you can just have conversations. The key thing though is to like remove the emotional piece, which is sometimes hard.
Very.
Um, and so being smart and self-aware about, like, if you're not in that headspace to have, like, to be able to take those emotions out,
Wait.
maybe take a pause.
Yes.
Let's revisit this conversation. Let's go blow off some steam, because we're human. Everybody has emotions that we need to process. But in order to seek out that resolution,
Mm.
um, maybe talk to someone who you trust, who can kind of like let you be like, have them be a sounding board for you, but then also be like, okay, have you thought about this, right? Like,
Mhm.
someone who has no stake in the outcome either way, but who can just kind of let you see both sides of
That's
the
right.
equation and where you might find some negotiation or compromise.
Yeah, because you can say, "Oh, I want to do this," and so that person should say, "And what is that going to produce?
Right.
Is that what you want? And what will happen after that?"
Right.
So, and then,
Those-
if you do have an attorney that hasn't acted on what they are supposed to do, the place to file is with the state bar. It's a complaint against the attorney. So
that's
making sure that you have your log, when you spoke, what took place. And it's sad that you have to do that, but always think of it from the point of divorce. Don't think of it from the point of the honeymoon, because when things go bad, are you protected? And so I kind of want to just talk about, with all contracts, there's 3 very essential elements and then several others that are helpful to have. One is the offer. Moana, what are you offering me? What's the consideration that I have to pay you for what you're offering? And
Mhm.
do I accept? So there's offer, consideration, and acceptance. These are the 3 things that make up any legal contract. Period. End of discussion. That is it.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that is identifying the parties properly, meaning maybe I'm not contracting with you, Moana. Maybe I'm contracting with Moana Nui Podcast. Making sure that the entity or person is actually the person that's going to be performing all of the terms of this agreement. Do
Mhm.
not just say, okay, cool, I'm going to do it with this person. That's not who's going to be providing. That's not who I can sue. Then the meeting of the minds. So you lay out terms and don't sign anything in the don't sign any contract that you're not sure what is being laid out for you and for the other party and how they need to perform. And this is, you don't want to, if something's not speaking to your uhane, then you have to kind of lay it out and say, what does section 7 mean? Because at what time are you going to do this? And what if you don't? And I'd rather clear the air now instead of later. Because if the judge has to come back and say, what does section 7 mean? No, they didn't violate it. They still have, 3 weeks is reasonable for them to turn this around. No, it's not. They knew I had a deadline. Well, this is nowhere in the contract. So you want to make sure that the meeting of the minds occur and that both sides will be successful. And then competency and capacity, who you're hiring to provide these services, are they in fact who they say they are? Where are some references of who they've worked with in the past where they have shown competency? You don't want to pay for someone to learn how to put a website together and you're paying an hourly rate, not a flat fee, and they've never done this before. And
Right.
then you're left with a very crappy website or no website at all, and you've missed your deadline. So, the competency and then the capacity. So someone's competent, right? We know all of them, and they're not always the nicest to work with because they know they're competent, but they don't have the capacity because they've taken on way too many clients. They have not made, no one is priority. They do what they feel like they want to do when they want to do it, and they will not keep to their deadline, if at all, because they are overwhelmed. And so you want to make sure that these additional things of identification of parties, meeting of the minds, and competency and capacity are there. So that's in every single contract to protect yourself. And so, also what they say, I have it written down here, what the big print giveth, the small print taketh away.
I like
So
that.
there should be no small print. Okay. It is on software agreements. You see this all the time.
Yeah.
Service agreements where they're servicing something on your computer or some sort of software, but it shouldn't be in service agreements and good purchases, and definitely not not in an LSA in a law firm, because there should be no fine print. Everything should be right there. You should discuss every word in the presence of your attorney or with them on Zoom before you sign that agreement and return it. And then also make sure you have an agreement, because verbal contracts are very hard to enforce. So I wrote down another funny comment, which is very true. A verbal contract isn't worth the paper it's written on. Non-existent, right? So try never to enter into a verbal agreement. Try to always put something in writing. And if not, there must be specific criteria that must be met in order for the court to enforce this verbal contract that you've made, whether you're in California or Hawaii. This goes same for both states. And so oral contracts only become enforceable if part of the performance has been met. But how do you prove this? This is where emails, text messages, recorded phone calls are very, very important. So don't just delete your emails. Everything then becomes part of the record and is evidence.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was gonna ask, how does emails play into all of this? Like maybe, like the contract itself has like it's a general contract, right? But like that may not get into all of the details, but there are things that might be spelled out back and forth in an email chain. Is that enforceable from a legal perspective as well?
It should be. Yeah, it should be. I mean, ideally, you want that in the contract and you
Yeah.
want something in there as far as modification may not occur through performance. I love that provision very much, but things do change, and they don't necessarily always cause the parties to enter into an amendment of the agreement. So, yeah, everything nowadays is considered evidence. It will show the way the contract was being performed and when and by who.
Okay. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
helpful. Just so many evolutions, things move so quickly.
It's true. And projects shift too, and relationships, shift because of the project and the needs of the project. It just depends. It can be very complex and sometimes it's very simple. It's just, yeah, contracts need to spell that out because I always said, if you can't speak, what would the contract say for you? And that's really important. If you were mute, what would your life say about you? These are things we need to think about, and then a legal sense is really, if you were mute, how would you explain this to a judge? You wouldn't be able to. It would have to be all spelled out, written in that contract.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, working on some of these creative projects is definitely like a lot of evolution and changes that happens over time. Like what was intended at the beginning is not necessarily how it plays out in the end. And, knock on wood, but fortunately, so far things have been okay. Don't want to jinx myself, but
No, you don't. You won't. You're too good of a wahine. That's not good. I think it's just difficult. You just and when things do go poorly, you have to think. What is the if I respond this way, or if this is the right way, but if I do this, then there's collateral damage. Do I want to ruin this relationship? And then you have to ask yourself, why do I want to be in this relationship? Is there other things? Is this part of the package? Because it's not always going to be smooth glitter and gummy bears and unicorns. It's going to be difficult sometimes, and you have to choose what collateral damage you're willing to accept and not accept.
Yeah.
Especially with your licensing and rights of ownership. Like is it a work for hire and they own everything, or are you licensing them to use it for a specific project, and for how long, and do you receive any residuals on that, royalties, and how is that laid out? When is that paid out? So there's a lot of questions there when it comes to ownership.
Yeah.
I mean, think of it, intellectual property is like as if it's real property and you're renting out parts of your home. For how long? Do they own that room? No, they're only leasing it, licensing, that sort of thing. And for how long? Can they make any modifications to it? Can they misrepresent it? Can they put it out in advertisements? Yes. And for how long? So yeah. And is it streaming? How much will they make off of that? And how much percentage will you get? Are you exempt from streaming beyond what you've already negotiated? So there's a lot there that needs to go into deep thought when it comes to things that you've created, and you're licensing a powerhouse such as like Disney, who is its own universe with its own powerhouses. Yeah. Watching over its own ownership. So they'd love to absorb other artists' creations as their own.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's part of the Kanaka business mind too. Everything was done verbally back in Maoli times, and now we're forced to think in this Western way because this is the way that we're living now. So it is kind of hard. It's no longer the gentleman's handshake or the understanding between one, village to the next. So it can make it kind of difficult.
Yeah, I wish people would just be good for their word, right? Like, I mean, that's definitely, how I operate, but unfortunately so many people do not. And so I'm definitely cautious about
Yeah.
what people put themselves out to be, right? Like, oh yeah, I can do this, just the slimy, used car salesman, greasy stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you should do this. Okay, but can you show me receipts of like what you've done before you're out here? Like, there's a lot of people out here trying to teach somebody something, right? And I'm like, okay, anybody can teach something, but I want to see the receipt. What is the results of what you have
Yeah.
done?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah, it's definitely an interesting world that we live in for sure.
Yeah, so
Okay.
there's some essential elements of a contract if you'd like to speak about that, or is there other
Yeah.
questions that you have from any of the audience?
No. I think the essential elements thing would be good. Yeah.
Okay, so number one would be purpose. What is the purpose of this contract? What is the purpose of these parties linking together, whether they're individuals, an individual with a corporation or a company with another company? Confidential information while you're in business with one another for whatever the purpose is. What is confidential of one party to the other, and who can share it with other people?
Mhm.
Including third parties that maybe one company may outsource to. It should be on a need to know basis, not the whole relationship and all of your information, because where is that being stored? Where is that being held? And who is that being shared with? So confidential information, use of the confidential information, disclosure restrictions, maintenance of that confidentiality during the life of the relationship. And then at the end, the return of the confidential information or materials, setting that out. Not someone just doesn't get to keep it. There should be some sort of verification, which is usually an honor system, that it's been deleted from the systems if it's electronic, or that the physical materials and information have been returned to the rightful owner, which is the other party. License. So when you are entering into a relationship, we just spoke about this. Are you providing a license for them to use or even mention on their website that they're in a contract with you? Speak about your relationship. Do they have to keep you anonymous, or are you actually giving them a license for a specific use for a specific period of time? Term. How long is this relationship going to be? It can always be extended, but what is the proposed time? Well, we see what we call evergreen contracts, and I hate these so much because they continue without end until they're terminated, and it's really not wise. I mean, I also think, sidebar, that marriages should also have a term and they get renewed, right? I think that should be really something, since we've got 80% of marriages ending in divorce in Southern California. This might be something to enact in the family area in the future. Let's sit down and go over our terms and see if we want to renew, right? Anyway, funny sidebar, not. My dorkness is coming out. Remedies. So what if someone doesn't perform, they breach knowingly, unknowingly, and they cause harm to the other party or person? Like, what are the remedies other than just suing? That should be laid out as well. Governing law. So you're in DC, I'm currently in California. We enter into a contract, and because I'm the one that's providing services, I'm going to say, you know what? I want the governing law to be California. If something happens, you want to sue me, I want to sue you, it's going to be heard here. You're going to have to fly here, and you're going to have to respond to the lawsuit or file the lawsuit here, stay here, and incur all those costs, or vice versa. So which law, a state law, is going to govern over this is a really interesting topic, a very important one. And sometimes you'll see that I'm actually going for remaining silent in some of these provisions for governing law, because then the person that's been aggrieved or wronged actually has the option to file it in their state, not where the services are being performed, which is then being transferred across states. So across sister states all the way to you to the other side of the coast. So governing law is also another one. Another provision that's required should be in there is a waiver. So say that any other part of the contract has been determined to be illegal and unenforceable. This waiver provision allows for the rest of the agreement to stand as legal and enforceable, even though one provision has been found to be not. amendments. So this is not the end all be all. This is not an irrevocable trust like we've spoken about in previous shows. This can be amended at any time when the relationship or the responsibilities change. And that should be unlimited, but it shouldn't be verbal. It should be in writing. 3 more would be illegal or unenforceable provisions. That goes also to waiver. And notices. How do I notice you legally? Is it just an email? Is it written and it has to come overnight mail? And what address and to whose attention should my legal notice of you've breached the contract, Moana, should that go to? So that address and name attention is very, very important to place into a contract. And then lastly, besides the signatures and the effective date of when this takes place, acceptance of digital and counter signatures, so counterparts, if you will. So ancient times, even not too long ago, before we had DocuSign and HelloSign and Adobe Sign and all these signs, it was required to have a wet signature, and that would be accomplished obviously by messenger or overnight mail. And nowadays, digital signatures are actually considered originals, and counterparts of counter signatures may also be on different pages. And that's how it works. So you can actually have a digital signature of Moana on the first signature page, and then it's page 13 of our agreement. And then you'd have another page 13 of my signature that's wet or digital. It doesn't matter. Those two then are combined as page 13, and those are valid binding signatures. And so those are some of the elements that you'll see in every single contract. Regardless of what it is. And besides like a marital settlement agreement or a property settlement agreement, which would of course contain many other provisions for child support, taxes, who claims the children, visitation, and distribution of single and marital property, this is more for business and just regular services agreements that we just went over. I hope that's helpful.
No, yeah, definitely. You mentioned the term counter. Can you explain that one just a little bit more?
Yeah, so it's just the other signature. It's fancy
Oh,
word
okay,
for other
gotcha.
signature. Yeah. So say
Gotcha.
one party signs, and then I'll send it out to my requester at the office and say, this is ready for counter signature, which just means the other party needs to sign and return it, and that's
Okay,
it.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Very, very helpful, especially the part about like which law governs the contract. Because
Yes.
I've seen those, and I'm like, oh, that means that you gotta go to that state if you have any issues with it, right? And like you said, there's you have to incur all of those expenses too. So
I wanted to go just rewind to what you were talking about, how you firmly believe that others can come to a resolution without having to go through hiring attorneys and going to court. And that is our modern day form of ho'oponopono, to make things right, to correct. And there's also some provisions that may be in the governing law section or just thereafter. It's its own section. It's dispute resolution, which could, in fact, require the parties to participate in non-binding, binding mediation or arbitration. So this is like a modern day legal form of ho'oponopono. And you don't have to set out the governing law where you need to meet, but you can set out that the parties agree to go to this mediation or arbitration within selecting like JAMS or specific types of dispute resolution companies out there. And sometimes they do have it within a specific county and state. So yeah, that's part of the agreement sometimes. Well, it's nice to have that provision in there to avoid court initially and try to reach a resolution and settlement. Sometimes it's struck, just like this morning, it was struck from one of our contracts. So it's not required, but it is nice to have.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's very helpful.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for explaining all of those terms. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions. For those who are online, if you have a question, feel free to drop it. We will be on for maybe a couple more minutes. But if folks have no questions, then we can end for the night. I think next month we're talking about intellectual property.
Wonderful. Good. We should also talk about independent contractor or consultant agreements too. So if we could add that, maybe we could talk about both of those. Yeah.
Make a note. the independent contractor, and
Yeah.
what was the second thing? Consulting.
Oh, consultant, yeah, which is basically the same.
The same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Consultant. Sweet. Okay. Well, I don't see any questions.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, maybe I was thorough. Who knows?
Oh my gosh. And as always, like if you guys are watching the recording and you have a question, you can put it in the comments so we can bring it up in a future episode, or you can email it to Moana Nui Podcast at gmail.com, and we'll pass it on to Kumu Manu and try to get you all an answer to your questions. Alrighty, yeah, I don't see any more. So okay, cool.
Okay, so I'll just close with a really dorky, another dorky saying.
I love you.
So Moana's gonna be like, sis, we can't have you on anymore.
No, I love these.
So an old school from Kin Hubbard said, the fellow that agrees with everything you say is either a fool or he is getting ready to skin you.
Oh.
Just be thoughtful of who you're engaging with, right? And who deserves your attention and your services and your products. And we should probably have a whole show on Kanaka and business wisdom, because people are giving away their creations and their ike. Probably a good topic.
Oh yeah, I agree, because I think it's not just Kanaka too, but everybody. I've been on a lot of panels and speaker engagements where I get the question a lot of how do you appropriately do do something respectfully if you want to incorporate a culture or an aspect of history. I'm like, well, first one, use Indigenous people who are from that culture, and two, pay them.
Yes.
I think some people feel oogie about asking people to pay, because that's not our traditional way. But this is the world that we operate in, and what we know has value, clearly, because there are entire industries that are built off of our cultures and our stories and all of those things.
And they don't benefit any of the Kanaka.
Exactly.
There's a new store that opened up over here in Newport, and I actually commented, how do you benefit some of the Kanaka Maoli organizations? And it's straight up called Aloha. Mm-hmm. It's got a huge store. Marketing is remarkable, and there's so many, even just the surfing industry, they benefit off of one of our cultural practices. And it's, there's, Kumuhula going to Japan selling 2 and 3 mele choreography. Hula is for $10,000. It's okay to do that. And then there's certificates in Ho'oponopono by non-Kanaka, earn your certificate in Ho'oponopono over the weekend. It's like, what, how do you stop? You can't stop it. So, right. But yeah, all of us do it with integrity. It doesn't mean there should be an energetic exchange there. There really should. And it's hard to do that. But, there are costs associated with teaching the cultural arts, and those costs should be paid by those that are learning it, not by the person that's already giving. And I should know I lose at least $15,000 a year teaching. And it's got to stop. There's insurance, there's rent, there's tools, there's travel, and medical too, to keep me, my stingers from developing into real injuries. So it's time for us, Moana. It just is.
And that's why I'm so grateful to Papa Ola Lōkahi for sponsoring our podcast, because, when I first started it, I used to get people ask me, I raised funding and money through Kickstarter. And so because I was raising money for the podcast, people were like, well, why do you need money for the podcast? It's just, you're just talking, right? I'm like, Well, yes, but like there's all these things like it doesn't just magically appear. One, I need to pay for the cost of hosting services. I need to pay, like, there's all these subscriptions for tools that Dana and I use to create
Yes.
this content. There are guests that come onto the show and are, donating their time essentially. And I would like to get us to a place where we can pay those guests, again, for their time
There's
and
some that require payment too. They don't just, they
exactly. There's
won't
a
do
lot
it
of
unless you pay. Yes.
yes. And if you want quality guests, like those guests are going to demand payment. And you should pay them, right? Like, so
Yep.
it's one of those things that I think, but those types of comments typically come from people who have not stepped into this realm. They have not um ever had to, run something
Yes. Or it's
substantially like
operations. Yeah.
yeah, like do it consistently. So I think, like the more that I have grown to in my own business, those types of comments used to bother me before. But now I'm just like, oh, that's just somebody who doesn't understand,
True. Yeah. No point of reference. Yeah.
yeah, no point of reference. And I don't need
Mm.
to, invest energy in that. I just
Nope.
focus on the
Wise.
people who do value the work that we do,
That's
um,
wise.
and keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Okay. Well, sis, thank you so much again
Thank
for
you.
your time. It's always awesome to hang out with you here on the podcast and, afterwards when we talk story.
Yeah.
But and to those who tuned in tonight, I hope you guys learned something new about navigating the legal system and what you should be on the lookout for in your legal service agreement. Sis, one more time, can you give the quote about the big print and the small print?
Oh, yeah. You liked that one, huh? I'm glad I said it. The big print giveth, the small print taketh away.
That's right. That's a good one. Maybe we need to make a shirt like this.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
The big print, give it, and then the small print.
Small print taketh away.
Jazzy. Ready and go. Design services.
Oh, I love it.
Alrighty. Okay. Well, thank you so much, sis. For those who are watching, thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, share. We definitely want this knowledge to get out to our community. Share it, learn from it. I hope this helps you in your life as you navigate all of the things that the curveballs that life loves to throw at us.
Yep.
And we are just excited and honored to be able to help you guys get access to this information. So with that said, we are going to say goodbye for now. Tomorrow, tune in. I think 7:00 p.m. We have our Urban Nerd Con. It's a Comic Con that's happening in Atlanta later this month. Has some amazing guests, and really we'll be having the con runner, the show organizer on our show. He'll be sharing what that con will be bringing. And one thing that I remember that they're doing, which is really cool, is they're asking folks to sponsor con badges for kids so that kids can have access. And these are kids who typically, don't have the resources to attend something like this. And so Dana will be there covering the con for the podcast. And I'm hoping that she can do some like quick interviews with kids and see how they're enjoying the show. Yeah, so we're all about the kids over here.
We are big kids.
Yeah. So with that said, everybody, thank you so much again. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Malama pono. Ahui ho.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves the Republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Lōkahi as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if we put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course. Cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Lōkahi as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.